Hello, hello. Welcome to Human Design Coffee Talk. And today we are talking about creating movement with 3-5 Splenic Projector Brandi Yates. So come on in and join us. Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. We'll wait till Teresa should be hopping on. Good morning. Hey, Jen. Hey, Martin. Hello, hello. Hey, Dave. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We haven't been on here in a while. It's been since the Human Design Conference. Good morning, good morning. Martin's in the house, looking all cool. Good morning. Okay, I see Brandi hopped on. There's Teresa. All right. Waiting for Teresa to hit join live. Let's see here. There we go. And let's see if this works.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi, you guys.
Good morning.
How are you guys?
Good. How are you? I'm super excited about this live because
I'm nervous and excited. I'm so freaking stoked to talk to you too.
yeah, well, because it's really, Teresa and I were kind of talking about this. We're both fourth lines, right? And you're not, I mean, besides the Human Design Network, you're not in our network of any sorts, you know?
Not at all. And what's interesting is like I actually just made the realization like I don't reach out to people. That's like not a thing that I do. And like now it all makes sense. I'm like, dang, I have like no fourth lines in my chart. So that disconnection and having that gate 40 of aloneness, like it really all makes sense in how I like maintain my friendships for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I came across you on TikTok and I actually a while ago and I sent your TikTok to Teresa and I was like, do you know this person? And she's like, no. And I'm like, how do neither of us know who this is? And you have quite a TikTok following and you really like honor the integrity of human design when you're talking about it, when you're doing your videos about it. And I was like, there's no way that somebody speaks of human design this way and we don't know who they are.
Yeah, I mean, I've really only been on this journey really of expansion with human design for like the past year. I've been studying it for 2 years, but really this last year, it's really just been about embodying human design, like really getting in touch with the energies and the gates. And you know how long it takes to learn all that stuff, right? And so really slowing down to really embody it. But what's really interesting, I'm not sure where Teresa went, but where this conversation is even going. But you guys sparking me coming on this coffee chat has really even just shown me how even like disconnected from my brand that I am. And because of this invitation to this coffee talk, it's really put me in a perspective on how I need to step more into my power as a projector, which is something we can dive into more today. But yeah, you guys just inviting me on here, just getting the invitation truly has changed my perspective and the direction that I want to go. Because I have been stuck for like 2 months. I'm like, why am I stuck? What's going on? Like, I'm not sure what I want to do. What's my next step? But just even this connection, like within the past 48 hours, I've had like a clear vision and like just ready to move forward. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. Is Teresa frozen on your side?
No, she's moving.
Oh,
Yeah. I don't know. I time hopped.
You're frozen on my screen, so I hope that as it's recording, it's not just your face frozen.
Right.
Hopefully, we'll see. I could be a talking frozen face.
Well, it's a good face that I have that's frozen. So.
Good. I'm glad I caught my good shot.
Do you guys want to let us know in the comments if you can see Teresa moving? That would be helpful. It's not frozen. Okay, cool. All right.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, Brandi, we were talking about you yesterday or something, because Brandi and I talk on the phone like every day. And I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to talk to her. And it was from this space of, we're like, what do we recognize in her? Like, we had to almost have this conversation of like, we're both recognizing her, but what is it that we're recognizing? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I feel very clearly her need motivation coming through. Like when I watch your TikToks, and I've popped onto a few of your lives too, and I just feel this like very clear like need to educate, and this very precise, like laser focused way of educating people. Yeah, and I just really enjoy the way that you explain things and like the energy behind it. And also, I feel because you are a pure individual, there is this like mutational component that you bring, and I really enjoy that because I have a lot of individual circuitry. So it was cool just to like have that moment between us, like, what are we each recognizing in her?
Yeah. That's so awesome to hear. I mean, I can't tell you how that just makes me feel being seen as a projector. I'm like, yes, I fucking love this. But I mean, like, that makes sense, you know, even when if you look at my chart, you know, I have that gate 4 in Jupiter, which is all about finding answers, right? And when I'm doing these readings, I'm finding answers. Like, what are the answers that you're searching for? What are the answers that you're stuck? And so what's really interesting is that the transition that I have made from like coaching fitness into coaching human design, right? And being able to take these skill sets that I have, because I've always known as an individual, my voice is something that I lead with, right? I grew up playing sports and I was the person that led us this way and led us that way. So I've always known I've had this verbal type of expression, and I have my sun gate in gate 31, like, duh, it all makes sense, right? And there was this period where I was in this transition of coaching fitness and having absolutely no idea what I wanted to do in this world. And like I was bouncing at a bar. And then after that kind of settled down, you know, I had this moment where there was absolutely nothing going on. Like nothing. I had lost my job. COVID had all just happened. Like it was a really kind of like a dark time in my life, right? But then I have this channel of struggle in a sense of where I told myself, like, I can't just go back into another job that doesn't serve my purpose. Like I will mentally go insane, right? And then from like the outside, I can understand where people were like, what is Brandi doing? Because I was pawning my stuff. Like I was living so minimalistic because I didn't want to go get a job just to survive. And I was like, I'm going to struggle a little bit and figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And during this time, that's when human design kind of fell into my lap. And I was like, what is this? And I had been on this this journey of really self-helping myself, right? Because I grew up in an unstable environment with a lot of trauma, and I've been trying to heal from that trauma. And what human design has truly offered me is a way to self-help myself and to help heal that trauma by looking at this human design, by bringing myself back into myself. But the biggest thing that it's really done for me is that it's where I'm at right now is that I'm learning, and consciously still learning, that my mind is not an authority, and really taking myself out of making mental decisions and still learning. And that's still leaning into my strategy and my authority, right? We're 2 years in of this experiment, and that's still something that I focus on heavily because of how much I resort back to my brain and I resort back to my mind to make this. So really it's been, this amazing transition, and being able to really heal myself through this modality by being able to understand how my mind works, by removing myself from my mind and getting myself back into my body, if that makes sense.
Yes. I'm curious, how were you presented with human design? Like how did it fall into your lap?
Well, what's interesting is during this period where I had nothing going on, I was like, well, I'm going to start a podcast. Let's do this. And it was during those podcast interviews that someone was like, have you looked at this? Have you done this? I'm like, what is this? What's going on? And I found it. And then that's where I just became completely engulfed in it. And I realized that after I started seeing the results after, a few months, I was like, why is everybody not using this? Like, this is crazy. And so that's when I really opened up to like, maybe this is something that I should start offering to people. Maybe this is something that I should start introducing to people. And ever since then, since I've made that shift that this is what I wanted to focus on, it's been a game changer ever since.
Yeah. So how was it for you finding out you were a projector?
Okay. Still healing from all of that today. And this is, okay. So I'm going to bring this in because I find it super interesting within my story, but my Chiron is in gate 56, right? This is also called the gate of stimulants, but it's also this gate of storytelling and speaking through storytelling. And that's something that I'm meant to heal. And I feel that so deep into my soul. I'm like, yeah, I really need to heal how I tell stories, how I'm telling these stories. But once I found out that I was a projector, it made sense. Everything made sense, because before I had found out that how projectors operate, how we're designed to utilize our energy, I was living completely like a manifester, a manifesting generator, a generator. I was living like everything but myself, because I had been conditioned that way, right? I was conditioned that you need to go out and do this if you want to get this. You need to go out and do that if you want to do that. And I was in that fitness industry. So I was coaching a lot. I was working with groups. And I'm a very open projector, as you guys see. Yeah. I'm taking in energy all the time. So what did I start doing? I started taking Adderall like nobody's business. And I was actually prescribed, went to a neurologist, had my brain scanned because I was taking medication and it wasn't working. And I got to 120 milligrams a day. That's what was, prescribed to me by a doctor. That's what I'm saying. And I thought I needed this. I was like, fuck, I can't function without this. And so when I didn't take my medicine, I was a ghost. I couldn't do anything. I was depleted. I wouldn't get out of bed for 3 or 4 days. And then I would go work. And it was just, I was exhausted. Completely and utterly exhausted. And so when I really reflect back into like, what was I doing? Like, why was it? My ego was so big. I was living everything from that heart center because honestly, it stimulated from when I was younger. Since I was younger, I've struggled with my self-worth. Like truly, like, because I grew up with, my mother, I believe, has narcissistic tendencies, which I feel like has played a lot into my belief about myself. And so when I reflect back on like, why was I like trying and pushing so hard? I also created this image of myself. And I was like, I have to be this person. This is who I have to be in order to make it. And my G center eventually was like, hey, we've got to change. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to change. This is working. Feels good to me. And man, eventually I just broke. And I don't take stimulants anymore. This is tea that I'm drinking. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink alcohol. I've completely had just finding this and realizing human design and how I operate has really allowed me to step into my own energy without needing other supplements, really, and really truly learning how to honor my energy. That's really been my journey so far.
Yeah. Projectors, I'm married to a projector with only 2 defined centers. And it's wild how much you guys can take in. And
super generators.
Yeah, super generators on 120 milligrams of Adderall.
That is the most I've ever. Brandi and I were both, diagnosed with ADHD, so I've been on Adderall meds like on and off throughout my life, and that is the most I've ever heard of anybody being prescribed. Like, I can't even believe that.
The pill that I would take, it was called Medasis, and it looked like a party pill. It was blue and purple. I'm like, geez, but man, I felt like a superhuman. I felt like I could do anything. But then let's talk about that, right? Like, yeah. When I would take that, first off, my head and my ajna are undefined, right? Yep. So it would create this pressure inside of my head that I would need to release and do something. So I was taking on projects like, yeah, I can do this. Sure, I'll do that. Why? Because I'll just take this Adderall and figure it out. When in reality, none of these invitations that I were receiving were from me being recognized. It was just for me to utilize my energy. And like, now I understand why in all of my positions that I've been in, like, I've just been straight up bitter. Just like, what is this? What's going on here? And so, yeah, it's been, it's truly like understanding my human design has allowed me to take my power back, because also as a projector, I now, like, when I go into a situation, it's so freeing to be like, I don't have to do shit unless you told me that you want me to. Like, that's on one of the biggest, and my 3-5, especially that 5th line is like, cool, we could take a step back, let's relax from these projections for a little bit. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's common with projectors, is getting recognized for the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. Like, because you're operating like a super generator, and then generator, you're getting recognized for being able to do all these different things and like almost the overcompensation. And then people are like, oh, cool. Especially if you have a motor like you do, then it's like, oh, you have energy. You can do these things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's not what you want to be recognized for.
No. And that's really, when you keep bringing up that recognition, that's one of the biggest things that, I mean, for any projector that's on this live or listens to this, like my biggest realization is that as a projector, you have to get specific on what you want to be recognized for. And like, honestly, that's what this interview, you guys inviting me on here, made me realize. I'm like, man, what am I being recognized for? Like, I understand, like, I'm in human design, and at the beginning of my human design journey, that is what I wanted recognition for. But now that I'm here, I'm like, okay, now let's go further. Now let's go further. And so I've spent time with myself this past week, like, now what do you want to be recognized for? And now I know what direction, and I'm really excited. I'm not going to tell you what I have coming up because that's like very immature. But getting that specific on what you want to be recognized for now allows me to know, okay, this is my energy. My energy needs to go where I want to gain that recognition. So if I want to be recognized as a projector leading other projectors, then I need to go in that direction, but I have to get specific on my recognition. And so that's where really projectors can take their power back, is getting specific with their recognition. And that helps with their niching and their branding and their marketing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool because like projectors, at least from what I've seen in my experience interacting with them, a lot of times they don't know what they're here to bring to the world because you can't see yourself. You see yourself through the other. So it's like almost waiting for the recognition. And it's like, what are people recognizing me for when I'm in my own flow and when I'm doing things that I want to do, and like just being you, what are people recognizing you for? And I always recognize projectors for their definition, you know. And so I'm like, oh, well, what is it? And with you, I hadn't seen your chart, but I'd seen you on my For You page so many times, and I was like, what is it that I'm recognizing, you know? And I had to, it's like with feeling cognition, it's kind of hard to put a name to it because I'm like, there's just a vibe, there's a feeling, there's an attraction. And that's the thing, is the projector is very like attractive. You're here to attract that recognition. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, I really never made the connection that people may be really drawn to that need motivation, like just needing an answer or needing. And now I'm like, oh, you know what? Shit, I do that. I'm really like, here's your answer. Here's this. Let's just give you what you need. Because, yeah, when I'm in transference, I'm in that wanting to know everything type of position.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did it feel for you? Oh, sorry.
Can you repeat that?
How did it feel for you when we keynoted your chart?
What do you mean?
Like when I sent you that description and we keynoted your chart to see, because as a projector, not like totally seeing yourself, but to have somebody else like people who don't know you, you know, because we didn't know you, and we're like, we are making this and based on her definition, you know.
No, I felt like it was extremely spot on. And what's so interesting, and it's so true, and it's so crazy that we truly learned through the other. Like, if you asked me to write a description, I'm like, it wouldn't have came out like that. Like, not at all. So, like, even what she said, I'm like, dang, she said that better than I would have said that about myself. Like, that's awesome. And so it really is, it's just crazy how we learn through the other. And now it just makes sense why, even when I was coaching fitness, it was way more than just fitness. It was way more than just moving. It was about the connection. How do you feel? It was so more in depth. And that's why I felt like I took my coaching a little different than other coaches, because I took it a different level in that sense.
Yeah, you and I have a similar background, actually. I like co-owned a fitness studio. I was in that industry for 5 years, and I found human design like in 2017. So I was like studying it and getting into it, and then I started telling my clients about it, and I would be like, you know, they'd be doing their workout, and I'm like, yeah, so you're a manifesting generator. Like, I'm like giving them a reading while they're working out. And then it got to a point where they're like, okay, I want to hear about this, but like the working out is getting in the way of this. So can I just book a session with you just to talk about this? And, you know, on the second line, so people were like, you need to do this for a living. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, I don't know that much.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. And then COVID hit and I lost all my in-person clients. I was like, I got to figure something out. I mean, by then I'd been doing it for a few years, like on the side. So it was like a little bit of an easier transition than it would have been. But yeah, it was like COVID hit and I was like, I don't want to do fitness anymore.
Yeah. I'm not sure what it was for me that really died in that industry. Well, I mean, I know I was fucking exhausted. I know exactly
Yeah.
what it was. I don't know why. I'm like, I don't know what it was. I know I was exhausted.
That industry is exhausting, even for an MG. Like, I have 3 motors, and I'm like, I couldn't do it. It's like,
yeah.
Mhm.
I have a question. I
Yeah.
have a question since both of you are here. I'm glad I remembered it. Thank you. Okay. I would love for one of you to talk to me about when it feels good to you to inform as a manifesting generator.
Oh, yeah.
it's a great
We
question.
can both riff on this. Absolutely. So we talk about this. We do workshops and intensives for generators, the manifesting generators, and we talk about this a lot. So when you're coming from a place of response, it's like respond and then inform. And I notice that if I'm not informing people because I move really quickly, if I don't inform people that I have pivoted or what I'm doing while I'm working in response, then people around me get frustrated or bitter, or I get angry because they're not doing what I thought they were going to be doing. Because I own a wellness center, so I have staff, and I've caught myself doing this tons of times because I'll be like, pivot, and everyone's like, wait a minute, I had no idea you were doing that, and they'll kind of let it build because I move so quickly. They're like, I don't even know when to approach you if you don't constantly inform. So what I've actually started doing in my business is when I'm interacting with another co-creator, whether we're doing a workshop or set one-on-one sessions and getting them all set up, I CC all my staff in on the emails just so they're informed of what I'm doing because I move so quickly. But for me, it's informing from a place of response.
Yeah.
Teresa.
Mine's different because I'm emotional. So what I've noticed, and especially, I have the 659. So I noticed that, I have 3 different emotional waves, but that's one of them. And I do notice that because I also have the 1222, which is a manifested emotional channel, my emotions can have impact on people, and especially those that I'm intimate with or that I'm close with. And so if I'm riding my wave about something that I'm responding to, I have to inform the people that I'm close with that it might impact of what I'm riding my wave about. But the response comes first. Like, I'm not riding my wave about initiating something. It's like, oh, something came into my field for me to respond to. And if I'm not kind of expressing a little bit about my emotional reality and what's happening, then when I'm processing the big feels, they're like, where did this come from? This came out of nowhere, And I've made decisions in the past without informing the people that are close to me. And then they're almost having to deal with the emotional fallout of like what I go through afterwards, and they just had no ability to brace before receiving that,
Yeah.
So that's what I've noticed. It's just a lot more emotional, and it's mostly with the people that I'm like intimate with.
Yeah, because I have a handful of manifesting generators that I work with, and again, assume those. But I can't ask them. I'm like, so when does informing feel good to you? They're like, I don't know. I'm experimenting, Brandi. You're supposed to tell me, and I'm like, well, this is the. But I just wanted to hear it from 2 manifesting generators with 2 different authorities, in a sense, because also, it just says to respond, and when you look up those, but I know that you're meant to inform, and so I just wanted to ask that question because it has been on my brain for a while. So thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
You know what's cool though, as a projector, you can ask your clients those questions. Just you asking us that question, I didn't even know. I've never talked about that before.
No, we're
that
super.
Was like,
yeah,
that was a new realization for me. In live, you all just witnessed live realization happening, and that's what can happen when a projector asks you a question. Yeah. So as a projector, the questions that you ask are so freaking powerful, and I think that's where we're starting to see a shift in the way that we perceive receiving coaching or guidance or whatever you want to call it, because projectors do a very specific way of guiding. Like, coaching and guidance are 2 different things in my book. And the way that projector guidance feels is very much like they're just helping me come up with my own answer. They might know the answers, you may not. You may just legitimately have a curious question, and your curiosity about me allows me to learn about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you asked that question too, and after Teresa answered, I started thinking about how we are. It's also based on the definition, because I know when it's really easy for me to inform, it's ego to throat, it's tribal. I have to watch that. That's not my authority. I'm not ego authority, but my chart thinks I'm ego manifester sometimes. But I noticed that my 3410, I have problems informing people of what I'm doing when I'm just in my own flow. That's part of the integration channel individual. So I'll just be doing my own thing. And that's when people around me are like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, you didn't let us know. So it's also, looking at the definition and seeing, when an MG, like I have different parts of informing,
Yeah. I mean, even so, I'm in a relationship with a projector, and like,
Mm-hmm.
so this has even been something like where I'm still working on it, but it also is starting to make sense. Even when it comes to the questioning part, like if I walk up to her and I'm just like, hey, why are you doing it this way, this way, this way? You should have done this. But truly, if I walk up and I ask a question and then she answers it, it allows her to answer that question. And so I'm starting to realize that with projectors, it's not about giving this unsolicited advice. It's about really learning how to ask those specific questions so that the other can learn through themselves, through their own guidance.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's so freaking powerful. Like, don't get me wrong, I've definitely had sessions with projectors where they've outright given me a statement because I've recognized them and invited them, and but there's also just been like the times that I think about like really how it feels to receive guidance through a question where I felt like I came up with my own answer just by answering the question. That is a very cool experience.
Yeah, it's powerful. I want to touch on some human design in real life, living with a projector awareness. I'm starting to see the depth of the recognition and the invitation, even in like everyday living, right? Because I live with a projector. And this morning, I get up and I take care of my brother 24/7 right now because he has a traumatic brain injury. And I get up and I get my brother up, and it's a late start for the kids. And my husband is in here making coffee, and I said, okay, yeah, in about 15 minutes, I'm going to go wake up Weston. He's like, oh, I already did. I was like, it's late start. He gets to sleep in. And then I was like thinking, like, literally nobody invited you to wake up our child. Like, it frustrated me. And then he was feeling bitter about like not feeling like he could contribute, and help our family with the morning or whatever. And I was like, but literally, like, nobody invited you to wake up the kids. Like, it's like it comes as we move through our human design experiment. I see more and more where that invitation and recognition, like, you literally live by it. Everything that you do that might involve somebody else, you live by that, because that's when all of a sudden there's this like static in the frequency, or like, before knowing about human design, I just would have been irritated and been like, and not understood why, but now I understand why. And I'm like, I will literally ask you or invite you to wake up the kids when you need to. Yeah. You don't even have to use your energy to do that.
And then he's saving his energy. Yeah, he's not wasting his energy doing things he doesn't need to do.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see that recognition and invitation in real life, in the depth of it.
That's crazy to think about, because like I even wonder, I'm like, am I living to this invitation too hard? Like, am I waiting too much for this invitation, But I mean, like, it really is. Anytime that I step out of that line, anytime, like, it is instant bitterness. It doesn't take time to creep up. Like, it is just like, bam. And I'm like, fuck, I know. Like, it's just, yeah. Does that happen for you guys? Do you guys get like instantly frustrated? Like, okay.
Yes. And I think when you're living like most of the time, and like obviously none of us are always going to be in our signature. That's not the point of human design. But when you're used to your signature a lot, and it's like that's when you're grooving and moving and whatever, you get smacked in the face with that frustration or that bitterness, and it's like instantly tasting something bad, right? It's like, oh God, I'm not. What do I do here? What do I need to like reevaluate? What do I need to shift? How do I need to pivot? And so I've always used the vehicle analogy because that's such a human design thing anyways. And for me, I've always thought of your not self theme as like a check engine light. And so it's like when that pops on in your car, you can't help but stare at it. It's just so obvious. But yeah, it's an opportunity to reflect on like what got you there. And for generators, I don't know about projectors, maybe you can share with us, but for us, I find that it's actually pretty easy to get out of that frustration once you're aware of like what's frustrating you. Sometimes it can be like split seconds, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't need to be doing that. Pivot, and then I'm like back on my way. It's green light, go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also depends on the situation, because like if you're in a situation like where it involves a job, right, then that bitterness, of course, then it's harder to get out. But when it comes to projectors, my understanding as well is like that bitterness truly just comes when there is lack of exchange of, or there's not equal exchange of energy, because we're not an energy type, right? Manifesting generators, manifestors, you guys are the energies, the doers, the builders, the innovators. And so for us, there has to be equal exchange. And if there is not equal exchange, then I'm bitter. I'm giving you more than what I'm getting, and I don't have a whole lot. So what's going on here? Why am I the only one showing up? And so just being able to recognize that, like, even, has been powerful for myself too. Because like sometimes you don't recognize that, like, why am I constantly bitter in all of these situations? But being able to have that language of like, oh, I'm just receiving less here. That's why this is bitterness. Cool. It's not personal. And I'm just going to shift here. So it really helps to not take things personal because of this language that you build around human design.
Yes. Yeah. And especially like the first, I don't know, I hate quantifying things, but like for me, it's been the first like 3 years, where that's become something that's been in my awareness a lot, and it's interesting with human design because there's so much depth and there's so much information, but really just the simplicity of like your not self versus your signature, feeling what each of those feel like, not judging yourself or being upset when you're in frustration, or being like, oh no, I'm not living my design. That's not what it's about. It's, I recently had an experience with this. So I've not been working like a legit job or whatever the last 2 years. I've been working for myself entirely, and that's been great. But I also have a fourth line body, and I've just been working from home for the most part. And so I started feeling
open ego. That's a legit job.
I know, legit job. I mean like a W-2 job. You know what I'm saying? That's what I meant to say. Like it is a legit job, of course, but like one where I'm on somebody else's payroll. I should have specified.
Like you
anyways, or like had a boss. I haven't had a boss, and so anyways, I ended up like responding to this job. And I even told them when they hired me, like, I'm going to feel it out, like, because I'm emotional. So it was almost like I got enough clarity to start the job, but like, I'm just going to see how it goes. But it wasn't actually like through my network. And I had to reflect back on, wow, every single job I've ever had that has been in my network has lasted me quite a while. And I've had like a good experience there. Whereas like I've had a few like internships, things like that were like 3 months. It's like 2 to 3 months is like the max amount of time I end up being at a job where it didn't come through my network. And with this one, it was no different. Even though my manager's super cool, she was also into human design. Like we had a lot in common. We're going to be friends now. Like I definitely made a new friend, but I ended up having an opportunity come through my network. And I'm like, I got to quit this job now. But it was also the frustration was starting to build like the last 2 weeks. I was like, oh God, I'm getting frustrated here. I can feel that this is incorrect for me. It's like the more my wave cycled through, I was like, okay, there are certain things that I was ignoring, certain things that I was just like, no, it's fine. That'll get better. And it didn't. And it was just the frustration kept building and building. So I feel like as an emotional generator too, like the frustration kind of goes hand in hand depending on the wave you have, but it like goes hand in hand with your emotions. And like, if it's like the emotions almost amplify the frustration. So I woke up the other day and I had clarity and I was like, putting in my notice. It was just like such an easy thing to do and such like a seamless segue. So
yeah, it's really interesting, like speaking about, because I have very little fours in my profile. When I'm even reflecting back to jobs that I have had that I have gotten through networking, through my network, they have not been good. Like it didn't turn out good. Like it turned out very bitter. And I'm like, oh yeah, maybe because I'm not meant to go through my network. I'm meant to bump into shit. Like that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to do whatever it is that my heart truly desires, and then to figure it out along the way, truthfully, and to bump into it. And so like even with you saying that, I'm like, dang, even when I've gone through a network, it hasn't always turned out the best for me. And when I've stepped into my own individuality and my individual circuitry, and I follow my own guidance, that's when things have started feeling a lot more successful in my experience.
Yeah, this is really interesting because I wonder if like I used to go to like networking events for the fitness studio, and they never felt right for me because it wasn't actually my network at these events. It was like strangers, right? Yeah. And I was like thinking my business partner was a 3-5 and she would crush it at these events. Like she was the life of the party. Everybody wanted to like get to know her. Everybody was projecting onto her, you know, and she'd be like, why don't you like going to these? And I'm like, because it's not my people. Like nobody notices me at these things because they're not my people. But a 3-5, at least from my perspective, like she could really like work the room because you're here to engage with strangers. So you know, if you were invited and it was correct and all of that, I would think that like meeting people in that capacity, somebody could like offer you a job on the spot. Whereas for me, it's like my opportunities come through people I've known for years, like people that I've really spent time building connections with and like are people in my close circle essentially.
Maybe I should reword this in a sense of what networking is, because you're right. Like with my 3-5, I would rather go to an event where I don't know many people because I know that I can make connections. I know that I can be able to work that room as a 3-5. It's nothing but projections when I walk in, right? And so I'm able to make networking, and actually I've had opportunities come from networking in that sense. But when I say networking, like I mean people that I am close to.
Yeah,
people,
network.
yeah, within
Network
my network.
Yeah,
That's where I feel like I have also leaned into like, hey, can you help me? Hey, can you help me? Like I've leaned into my network and it has not been successful because I thought that's what I needed to do. I thought I was like, I need to go to my people. I need to go to my group. And then my 3-5 is like, girl, you need to figure this out on yourself. You need to learn from your experiences, adapt and keep shifting, as opposed to keep going back to this core group that you keep going back to.
Have you noticed though, like, because this is something Amy Lee, one of our mentors, she's a 5-1, so different profile, but is also a pure individual projector. And I remember her saying that it's funny to her because she'll have her good friends be like, oh, hey, I like got this human design reading, or have you seen this person on Instagram or whatever? And Amy's like, what the fuck am I? Like, I've been doing this for 10 years, you know? And it's like, she just does not have influence over the people that she's close with. But she's like, the second they get into like a crisis mode though, and they really need somebody to come in and like solve their issues in a crisis, that's when they call on me. But it could be my line of work and they won't even think to like invite me or utilize me because I don't have influence over them. And so it just seems like it's the opposite with like 5th lines and 4th lines, because for us, like the more we get to know people, the more influence we have. Like I even have influence over my parents. Like it's why, and my brother is a 5-1. He has like no influence on my parents. Like it's really interesting to watch. Whereas like, yeah, but then the second we have a crisis, we're calling my brother in and he's the one solving it, you know?
100%. That's exactly like, no, yeah. Like now that you've said it, I'm like, yeah, no, people don't come to me like, yeah, I can't phrase that better than the way that you just phrased it. So yes, 100%. That is exactly what happens. That's how I feel as well. People only call when there's a crisis. People only call when there's something that needs to be fixed, or people think about me maybe in those times where there is something that needs to be only fixed, right? And that's where that 5th line truly comes in. And yeah, it's all about strangers. It truly is. And that's why I feel like I'm doing well with TikTok, and I feel like doing well with this, because it's just right now I'm engaging with a bunch of strangers and being able to have an influence with this community, as opposed I was trying to have an influence with a network of people that were the same and consistent. And I realized that maybe that's just not my jam. Maybe that's not where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, I really feel like TikTok is kind of an ideal platform for 5th lines because you are being shown to strangers every single day. Whereas like I have had some visibility and success on there and I've done all right, but I notice I intuitively just don't focus on it. Like I use it, but then I put most of my energy into nurturing my Instagram space because that's like DMing with people and getting to know people and connecting with people versus I almost can't keep up with TikTok because there's so many strangers. I'm like, oh, I don't know these people, you know? So it's kind of like, it's really interesting experiencing the contrast.
I feel like I've been so freeing on TikTok because of that, right? And it's just been like, because I was on Instagram, but I haven't brought TikTok to Instagram. That's actually my next shift is bringing that into this platform. But once I got on TikTok, yeah, like I was like, why does this feel so good? This is so freeing. It's nothing but strangers. Like it felt good. And as a projector too, right? Like I'm setting up this portfolio to show recognition, to gain in, like everything started making sense. But I guess where I've had resistance with TikTok is you have to be so particular with things. And I haven't had a direction. Like I said, like I'm feeling really disconnected because like with the branding, this creating movement and this Meraki stuff, I had this name before I even found human design and I tried to make it fit. Like I tried to make it work. And now I'm realizing, like I've had the realization, like you're trying to make something work that you don't have to make work. Like you can change that. And you guys actually brought me that realization. So again, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. I wonder, like, because Brandi and I are both very individual too. It's like individuals mutate each other even. Like, hey, coming in with mutation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we all carry channel of struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the only channel. Like it's the only thing that just keeps coming back and forth to me. Like I feel like it's the only thing I feel all the time because it's the channel that's connecting my definition. So when I found out, I'm like, man, that also just fucking makes sense. Like it just makes sense.
Do you feel, I heard somebody describe one time, they were like, channel of struggle is like, if there's not a mountain, you'll build one to climb because it's...
Well, okay, so if we go back to previous human design, right? When I was coaching fitness, like I have that gate 38, right? Yeah. The fighter. What was I fighting for?
Yeah.
What was I fighting for? I know what I was fighting for. I was fighting for my ego so that I could have worth in what I was doing. My fight was in something that was not mine. My fight was misplaced, right? And so, I was creating mountains where there didn't even need to be mountains. And I was making it harder for myself than what it needed to be. Because when it comes to that gate 38, like with a fighter, think about a boxer, right? If they're training for a match, they're going to practice with an individual that's going to challenge them so that when they're fighting, they're feeling every micro gain. They're like, yes, I got it. It's not easy. If it's easy, it's not working. Like I've got to feel that micro gain in what I'm doing. But if you can get through it and if you can get to the other side, then that's where that huge mutation comes in. And that's where other people are like, dang, am I struggling for the right things? Is what I'm fighting for worth it too? And so that's where on the outside looking in, people are like, what are you doing? Like I live in an RV, like I live a very different lifestyle. I'm doing it on purpose. Right? Like, I can go live in an apartment. Yes, I can, but that I would just be living paycheck to paycheck, trying to get myself out of this hole that I created for myself in my 20s. Right. And so, the channel of struggle, it doesn't always look pretty from the outside, but if you can get through that, you can cause a huge mutation in others through what you survive on that other side.
Yeah, and sometimes too, what I notice is because I put myself through the ringer, but I fucking love it, dude. I fucking love it. And at the same time, they'll kind of see it's like, oh, it looks so easy for you, and on the inside, I'm just like, it's just like, but I make it look good.
There's something about that channel, where it's like we like to feel alive.
Yes. We've talked a lot about this too with working out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to, and I tell Teresa this all the time, and I was actually responding to starting to really work out lower body stuff, and then my brother came and started living with me, and I'm trying to navigate how to get him to the gym. I don't have a response for that yet. So, but anyways, I'm like, I just want to push shit with my legs, it's like, get this out. I like going on walks because I can move that lower body energy a lot, but I'm just I just want to push heavy shit with my legs. Just get it out.
That sled, you need that sled.
I need a sled.
You.
I should
sled is
my
so
brother.
satisfying.
I'll just sled my brother in his wheelchair.
There you go. There you go. Just tie a rope around, put him in the back, find a hill. There you
Dude,
go.
love it.
He would.
If you do that, we all need videos. I just want you to know.
Oh, done.
Oh,
I
yeah.
take videos of everything. One thing about Channel of Struggle that Teresa and I were kind of talking about, and I'd love to hear your experience with this, or if this is anything that you've noticed, is that, and Teresa, correct me if I don't articulate this well, but when we're within 6 feet of other people that are doing something, I notice that they struggle a little bit. And then if I step away, it's like smoother for them. Teresa, do you want to expand?
Yeah, so this is just something I notice in my marriage a lot.
Same. It's in
my
my
husband's a 3'6", so he's like the tinkerer, and he can usually figure out how something works. So if, let's say, an electronic is broken, and I'm standing there and I'm fucking with it, and I am not fixing it, I'll be like, "Can you do this?" And then I have him come in, and I step away from him, because if I'm standing there, he will take on my channel of struggle, and he will get super frustrated because then he's taken into struggle. And Ra even used to say, I laughed so hard when I heard Ra say this, because I'm like, oh, that's what that is. And he was like, if you're a struggler and we're trying to fix something, get away from me. Get out of my aura. Yeah, all the strugglers.
Are you having a realization?
Because we can
The
empower
biggest
struggle.
realization of my life. Like, I cannot, I'm like, why are you struggling? I just showed you what to do. What do you mean? Like, I don't understand. But now it's me. It's me that needs to step away. Oh, this is going to make so much shit for my relationship. Like, I just...
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah, now I understand. Now I
You're
didn't know
shattered.
that. I know, I'm just, because I can't even tell you, like, how many times I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? I have a 3-5. I know from experience. I know what not to do. I'm setting you up. Like, I'm showing you. Why can't you just do it when I'm standing right here? Like, what is it? And now it's because they're picking up this struggling, fighting, and they're not used to it. And it's creating this unnecessary pressure within themselves, which now is causing them overstress and anxiety to where now they're struggling. And if I just step away, that pressure gets released. Son of a bitch. I am just blown away.
Guide them
Thank
from
you.
afar.
Yeah. You're doing great.
And especially Brandi, with you having a projector partner, with her doing that instant bitterness, it's like sour. Projector bitterness is just like, I just want to keep projectors in success, man. And my husband, like, we were taking our canoe down from the top of the garage because it was sagging. We were fixing it, and I was like, we went over what we were going to do, and I was standing right under him, and I was like, why are you making it more difficult than it is? I don't understand. And I'm just sitting there, and then I moved away, and he was able to do it. But I was just like, and he was all up there like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And then he was feeling that external pressure, and then he was messing up even more. And I was like, but you're naturally good at rope tying. I'm not understanding why you're struggling with this.
Get out of his aura.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is really fun in the car, right?
Fun in the
Make
car.
fun of our husbands because we both have undefined spleen husbands, and we have spleens, and so when we're driving with them, I'm always afraid for my life.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that just hit me now. I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
Maybe I'm empowering him with struggle when we're driving. And so
is he struggling while driving? Because I'm always like, oh, you're gonna hit that car. Every time my spleen is like, oh.
Yeah, and do you think yours, Brandi, comes through in a little more just because of also the position? Isn't yours in your earth?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so like yours, that pressure I feel like would come through a lot more for you for people. Yeah.
What is your partner's definition?
She's an emotional projector, and man, living in an RV with an emotional projector, we have learned a lot.
Let's talk about
projector. Emotional. I've got an emotional projector myself here, and whoa.
Man, so I'm still to this day, like, still figuring out the solar plexus thing. Okay. Because I mean, like, I even want to know, like, in my family, who has an emotional solar plexus. That's what I want to also know, because I'm sorry, it's not even her. It's just like I will wake up and I'm like, shit, I can feel it, like, and she doesn't even have to do anything. And I will and I have to watch myself, like, why am I mad? What's wrong with me today? Like, why am I mad at her? And it's like, I'm not even mad at her. It's just her wave. And like, we're still working on separating, like, it's not personal, it's your wave. It's not personal, it's your wave. But there are some days where it's hard, as I have a completely open solar plexus, no gates active. So I just pick up absolutely everything and then don't know and get overwhelmed with what I'm picking up. So it is just an ongoing learning process on how to stay grounded emotionally myself with somebody who consistently produces emotional waves. Because I also have an Aquarius moon, right? I am so detached from I am such the observer when it comes to that. And she's not. Her sun gate is in gate 19. She's meant to be sensitive. Her wisdom is in her feelings. And I remember at the beginning of our relationship, before we found human design, I'm like, why the are you so sensitive? Why are you making emotional decisions with everything? And that's what's so beautiful about human design. It allows you to honor your partner. It allows you to honor the way that they're meant to make decisions and truly not take it personal or react to the energy that you picked up. But man, it's a learning process for sure at being in that dynamic.
So I have a question for you. I know you guys are in an RV, but what are your sleeping arrangements? Are you sleeping in Aura?
So we do, but I will say, and she will contest, I will sleep out in the living room as much as I feel like I need to. There will be nights where I'll even get up in the middle of the night and I'm like, I just have to I will wake up and just like, I have to be by myself. But I'll wake up in the morning. It's really important for me that as soon as I wake up, I do something outside and really get in my own aura and not just always around hers. So we are cautious about not just always being like this, because we're just always absorbing, just constantly always absorbing. So we are mindful of that. But I will sleep in this what is a table that converts into a bed, at least probably one, if not once a week, once every other week for sure.
Yeah. That was life-changing for me, living with an emotional projector, but emotional being having an undefined solar plexus. 100% game changer.
Yeah. You guys sleep separate?
Yes, we have separate bedrooms now.
Yeah.
Because he was, that emotional wave, it's just going, and I couldn't like get good rest. I was always waking up feeling like I needed a little bit more sleep. And then laying in bed next to him, I was like, you're feeling something, you're processing something. Let's talk. Do you want to talk about it? Like, I just feel it was like leaching onto me. And I was like, what is this? And so, and him as a projector, it's a good idea to not sleep by my sacral, because he used to have like restless leg and arm syndrome, and now he doesn't. And I mean, it was life-changing.
I'm just also, I mean, I guess I've never put myself in your shoes, but like, I know how like being in other people's aura, because we absorb it, like how intensifying that can be. But I'm also now realizing how intense our stuff can be to you guys.
Intense. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Consent before penetration.
Consent before penetration.
Well, I don't think people really realize that the generator aura is porous. So we are actually very sensitive. We're not absorbing like the projector does, but a projector aura, like it's, if you're like, I would imagine if you're laying in bed with a projector, it would just feel like something's like poking you. If they're like facing you.
Yeah. Question for both of you, because you're a fourth line. My partner's a fourth line, and I'm just wondering if you guys have this experience as well. And because now that I'm thinking about it, maybe we should sleep a little more separate, because she's exhausted and maybe she can get more of a rest that way, even though she doesn't want that, but maybe we can figure that out. But do you guys feel, having fourth lines heavily in your profile, that if you're not taking care of yourself, or if you're in a line of work that is completely just like not aligning to you, do you guys get physically sick?
Fatigue. Fourth line fatigue is so real.
Okay.
But it's different. So she's a 4/6. I'm a 2/4. So mine's going to be very physical. It's like I just get physically exhausted, where I'm laid up on the couch and I need to take a retreat. I need to take a step back from the network. Whereas, Brandi, if you want to talk about how it's more mental for you.
Oh yeah, I just get like mentally depleted, like brain fog. It's like fatigue. It's not physical fatigue. It's totally like my brain doesn't function. Like I can't process anything unless I step away.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's really easy. I would think like for a projector too, are they a 2.4 or a 4.6?
She's a 4.6.
Four
Oh
six.
yeah.
Okay.
Is she
Yeah.
has she gone through Saturn return?
She's in it. She's in it. She's
Oh.
currently, she's going through it, right?
Well, here's
Okay.
my advice for you as her partner. Get real comfortable with the word aloof and just understand aloofness from afar.
Noted. Large note.
But it might take her a while to realize it because it took me almost 7 years to realize I was on the roof.
Yeah.
After my Saturn return, yeah.
I feel like it's harder for 4.6s compared to like 6.2s or 6.3s, or even 3.6s. But it's like because you're so invested in your network and you want to be involved, you know, and it's hard for 4.6s to learn like, oh, I need to take a step back from the network and go up on the roof and just observe versus always being so involved with everything.
Yeah. For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, sleeping alone though.
Yeah,
we will
Teresa.
sing that from the praise that from the rooftops.
100%.
It seems so radical, and I get it because your authority has to be a yes to it. Here's the thing: we can sing its praises all day long, and it doesn't fucking matter if your authority is not a yes to it.
Right.
So coming back to strategy and authority, but I will say, like, I was in my experimenting with human design 2 years before we started doing it, and the catalyst that was for deconditioning, especially with my ego, because I'm completely open in my ego and my husband is very defined in his ego. It was just like, oh, I get to wake up not being conditioned right away. You know, it's like, you know, those few moments like that. I usually lay in bed for like 30 minutes after I wake up and just like come back into my body, like, you know, find myself after coming out of dreamland. And I remember waking up next to him and it was like my ego would go off like immediately. Like, here's all the things you need to do today. Da, 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 da. Like just immediate conditioning coming through. And to just wake up in my own space and be like, this is what I feel like, you know, versus like immediately receiving that conditioning. I feel like that was life-changing. And I don't like, it's so weird that like when I tell people that him and I have separate bedrooms or sleep in separate beds, people get so weird about it. Like they think that we're having problems in our marriage or something. And I'm like, actually we're better than we've like ever been. And I was listening to Human Design Collective, like their new podcast, which was really good, but they were talking about sleeping in separate beds. And the guest was an emotional generator. I can't remember her name, but she was talking about how weird she thinks it is that people sleep in the same bed for the notion of like availability for sex almost. You know, it's almost like, you're more available for sex if you're sleeping next to each other. She's like, but what if you could make sex like more intentional? And it's like, yeah, like we're going to enjoy this intimate time together and it's going to be special. And then we're going to go our separate ways. And it's kind of like cute and sweet, you know, that you get to like go your separate ways. And I know people have different reasons for sleeping in the same bed. Sometimes you just have to because that's the space that you have. And that's totally fine, you know, or sometimes like if you have tribal channels, that's very tactile. My husband's undefined spleen, so he feels like safe sleeping next to me because I'm splenic. So there's a lot of different conditioning factors there. But just from my perspective, it's so wild, like getting to see the changes in both of us, because I actually I fill in his chart more than he fills my chart in. So getting to see like how he's shifted, like I've really seen his roots start to like decondition, and his sweetness. It's just been really cool to watch.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really also realize, because I knew that for projectors, I guess I thought even before this conversation, my perception was that those with an open sacral are more affected when they're sleeping. But I mean, from both of you and what you're saying with your defined sacrals, you're both affected just as much and you both benefit just as much sleeping separately. So I don't think it comes down to that defined sacral really anymore, right? Is that...
No,
I think Ra hammered on that because I don't know, like, if you're a projector sleeping next to a sacral, I don't know that you can really, this is a bold statement, whatever. I don't know that you can really decondition. Like if you're taking in that sacral conditioning every single night, because we're more sensitive when we're sleeping. So it's like we actually change types, the dream rave, it's a whole thing. But I feel like you can obviously like start your process, but I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to talk to maybe a projector that sleeps next to a generator every night and like how different they feel if they don't do that, because we're all experimenting with this, and it is like a science experiment. Like you really have to be able to feel the contrast and see the shifts.
Yeah.
Well, when Andy, we did a trial, and I'm sacral, so you also being splenic in the moment authority with an emotional authority, it's kind of hard because you could be like, that's a no for me, and they have to wait, you know. You're like, come on. So for me, it was like, let's try this for like a few nights, you know, where he slept on the couch, and then by the third night, he was like, okay, I think I'm ready to get my own mattress. But then even the separating into different rooms, that set off another emotional wave, because all he has is 3740, very tribal, touch, tactile. So then it was this, you know, working through the intimacy and, oh, does this mean that you don't want to touch me, or he needs physical touch, and moving through that wave with him, and knowing that whatever he was experiencing, there was no truth in the now, has then turned out to, we actually have the best sex life we've ever had. And he's fulfilled with touch, because I don't feel his emotions crawling on me all night. So I actually am not like repelled by them during the day.
Yeah.
I've had a break from them. So now I can give him that touch, just little, you know, just touch, hug, whatever. But before I'd be like, ugh, no, like I already feel like I've had too much of you, but I actually haven't really touched you except for when we're laying next to each other sleeping. So it has like shifted something in our relationship for the better in ways that I didn't even think would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it when you said about the sex and being intentional with that, right? I mean, this personally for myself, I feel like being conditioned sexually, it's a more of like sometimes it becomes like, I heard this somewhere where this lady was describing where sex is kind of like a theatrical thing. We've been conditioned that it needs to be this big play and that it's for the other. And there's just like this whole like conditioning on how it should be. But then I guess when you're sleeping separate and you come together and you're intentional about it, you know, you're able to maybe connect more. And you know, like this is your one special moment within this week or something. So all of your energy and your intention goes there, making it more of less of a theatrical type play, but more of a true, genuine connection that's going to only evolve your relationship.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And my husband now, his bedroom's in the basement, so now we have a sex dungeon basement bedroom. I mean, why not? No, it's like
Is his environment caves?
No, his environment's valleys. But I also just realized our 16-year-old's upstairs. She could probably hear me. Oh well. Hey.
Oh God.
We're open books.
I feel like with me being a 3 and having 3s and 5s, like 3s only speak with raw, honest truth. Like I feel like I don't know how else but to just be so vulnerable in my deliveries. Like I just don't even know any other way.
Oh yeah, 3-5s especially are almost like. Sometimes I'm shocked. I'll like have just met one, and then he's just start telling me all this shit, and I'm like, oh, it must be a 3-5, and it's always from a place of like humor too. Like I feel like 3-5s are just some of the funniest people. That's always my cue that somebody's a 3-5 when
we got to make a joke out of it.
Such a good sense of humor.
Shit just keeps happening. If we don't make a joke out of it, sometimes you get all pessimistic about it. I feel like you just
Yeah.
I have a question for you about your experiment. What have you noticed as far as your deconditioning of centers? What has been the one that has come up the most for you, or that you're struggling with deconditioning?
Oh, well, my chart's so open. So I feel like it's coming. It's all over the place and it's all the time. But I mean, it's really that heart center. Before I go into every situation, I really look at the situation like, what am I doing? Does this feel safe to me? Does this feel healthy to me? Is this like, because with that spleen, like a no is a no, but man, those yeses sometimes are sometimes hard to hear, right? Like I feel like the no's are so loud, but the yeses can get a little clouded. But that heart center, just yeah, with the relationship with my family, when it comes to worth and how we supported each other, the lack of support really wasn't there. And so my integrity and my self-worth and how I think and how I feel about myself and the reasons why I was doing things put me in really in the position that I'm in today. And so I'm really trying to step out of that heart center and not make these ego decisions. But then it also comes to, that open sacral. I have such a hard time with resting. It's that fear of resting. I've been conditioned that like, if I'm resting, I'm not doing something. So there are moments where I'm still trying to like, you're tired. My brain's like, you can do it. And I'm like, no, Brandi, but you're also tired. Like, just relax, just let it happen. Just, it's going to be okay. And then, so there's that. And then the G center, this has been, if you want to talk about real triumphs when it comes to deconditioning, I used to be an alcoholic and really heavily was trapped in that frequency of going out and drinking a lot, drinking by myself, made a lot of poor decisions. But that G center is connected to the liver. And it just made me, I honestly, to this day, can say with 100% conviction, I do not crave, have any ounce or want alcohol in any means, because I've now realized that me drinking alcohol completely stole my identity. And that is related to my G center. And everything that I did, every action, everything that I said came from a place of cloudedness and fogginess. And so I'm also conditioning in a sense of like, who am I without stimulants? Who am I without alcohol? Who am I without all of this external things? So that's also something that I'm diving into and really trying to embrace. So I feel like with every center, there's a lot of deconditioning that I'm still consciously working to get over. But that's why if there's any projectors in here that are as open, or if anyone's really as open as I feel like my chart is, it's really important to get to know those undefined centers, because they can really come in and cause a habit or a cycle in your life of a not self theme that you just don't understand why you can't get out. But looking at these not selves, can help you really shift that energy.
Yeah, a lot of times we get so deep into human design and we can dig into motivation and environment and cognition and bass and tone and all of that, but we can always go back to the basics and look at the not self themes of the centers. Number one, strategy and authority. But, it doesn't have to be so complicated. And that's one of the things that like attracted me to your TikTok, was that you don't make things complicated. You speak and you tell the story of human design very simply on TikTok, and you make it very easy to digest. Yeah, very practical.
Fifth line, need motivation.
Yep.
I need to be practical.
Yeah. I just think that's awesome. One of the things I wanted to ask you about your ego center, Teresa and I have been talking about this too, is like the underneath worthiness is belonging.
Mm-hmm.
How does that resonate with you?
Like always wanting to belong somewhere? Is that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but then I feel like that's where that gate 40 comes in. Gate 40 longs to be somewhere. And that for me is sitting in my conscious Venus and my Mars, right? So that gate 40 and so that sense of belonging, that's where it's like, I want to belong, but I want to be individual. Like I want to belong, but I also really want to be by myself. I want to belong, but I want to, I still need that space. So I feel like that's also a huge separation that I have. Like I have this urge to belong, but I have all these other things that are like, you're good with strangers, you're good with coming in and fixing and doing all this stuff. But there is this sense of where, I mean, if you talk about belonging, that would mean where I was trying to prove myself in a lot of situations because I just wanted to belong in that environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, especially as a pure individual, I feel like, anybody who has a lot of individual circuitry or is a pure individual, there's always that feeling of like, I stick out like a sore thumb, or I feel like I don't belong, or I have to mask to be in this environment. Like I can't really be myself, or else I'm gonna like agitate people or whatever, or I'm just gonna be so obviously not a part of what's happening here. And so I feel like there is a, there's many shatterings in human design. We have little mini shatterings, we have big shatterings. It's just a part of it. But that was something I really had to accept, was you might never really feel like you belong. And you might be able to blend in because you can mask, but you're not going to feel that inside. There's always going to feel this, like, I'm on the outside of this, like that feeling.
Is this only for undefined heart centers? Or would somebody with a defined heart center feel more belonged in these situations?
I'd be curious to talk to somebody who has like a lot of individual circuitry and a defined heart. Because there's also like one individual channel of the heart, but it's still like kind of motivated by tribal frequency. Even though like 2551 is individual, there's still kind of like a tribal edge to it, I want to say.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, well, my daughter has that, and so I'm just kind of she has the, 2551, and I'm just thinking, like, she doesn't yearn for that at all.
I was going to say, like, what if those who have that defined, they already believe that they belong, and so their actions, they're not really trying to prove. They're like, I already feel like I belong here, and so they're able to take these actions more where they're not trying to prove themselves. Whereas maybe somebody who's amplifying that situation, they're like, I do want to belong. So, and it's amplifying here. So I really need to prove myself so that I can belong. But someone who has that defined, they're like, I already belong. Like, I'm just going to just do what I do here because I desire to be here.
Yeah, that's you nailed it. Because when I reflect on her experience of what I see, she already is just like, I belong. Like, but it's not like to a thing or to a group or to a thing. It's just like, I belong.
I feel like that's where that, as an open ego, I feel this natural confidence that comes from defined egos. Whether or not they can feel it within themselves, I feel that frequency. And I think you just nailed what it is that I'm feeling is they have an innate sense of I belong. And so they are more, it's almost like I see them like taking risks more to like be themselves in a way. There's less of a sheepishness around taking up space. Whereas for me, I'm like, I was like a chronic apologizer, like, oh, get out of people's way, like that kind of thing. I don't want to take up too much space. Oh, let me like make myself as small as I can. I don't deserve to take up space. It's that kind of feeling. Whereas when a defined ego walks in, it's just like they're cool with taking up space. And I've talked to defined egos that say they don't feel that way, but I swear it's just a frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never thought of it like that, but all of that really, really resonated and makes sense.
Human design soup. We'll just get into it. We're just like crawling through it all.
This comment is cool. This conversation just moved into a topic exactly when the moon just went into the 19th gate. The whole planet is being conditioned by the channel of synthesis. Of course, we're talking about belonging as the channel of synthesis. Thank you for that. I'm assuming you're a reflector. Lunar connector.
Knowing that the moon just went in there, you must be paying attention to the moon, right?
I did feel a shift too, and like I don't normally feel the moon that much, but it was like like a kind of a left turn in our conversation.
I know. It just kind of like, yeah, that's interesting.
Well, you have gate 49, Brandi, so I wonder if that you just like felt it more.
I don't know. I
was like, I don't have gate 49.
No, there's two Brandi.
Yeah. Sorry, I got confused. I'm like, shit, do I actually have that gate? Man, I didn't know. Man, I can go back and look. My bad.
No, you don't want it if you don't have it. Don't worry.
You don't want it.
Yeah.
It's on an undefined solar plexus.
Well, I feel like gate 41 trips me up. It's one I still, that's in my earth.
Yeah.
And man, my imagination, I just cannot even tell you.
Oof, gate 41s are intense for me.
Yeah, I believe it because I just, man. And like, honestly, I feel like that's what came through. It was this anticipation of this conversation that allowed me to have that breakthrough that I'm having with where I want to go next with my projector business. It was the anticipation. And that's what's so cool about Gate 41 is when you're anticipating things, you can really, I think about everything, but the lowest expression is thinking worst case scenario. And like having that channel of struggle and having a third line, like that's something where I was living in the dark for a long time, like stuck in the worst case scenario. And I'm also here to heal how I change stories and how I tell stories. Like I remember, I don't even know if my sister's still on here. My sister popped on here. I started this podcast and my sister's like, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like this podcast, like you, because I was telling stories wrong. I was telling stories like while I was in, like, while these downloads were coming through, and my Gate 35 is like, hey, you actually need to like process this and then come back and talk about your progress. But I'm like, no, let's speak about it right now. And me literally trying to do that, like I go back and I listen to it and I'm like, I cringe at the things that I was putting out and I cringe at the things that I was saying. But yeah, this Gate 41, being in the root center, you wouldn't think it's such an imaginary gate that has such an influence on the mind, but man,
it's like the Fool, you know, it's like, I just think of like the Fool and the tarot. It's like, it's the ground zero. So it's the pressure to have a new experience, and that can go to the fantasy realm, or that can go to, the worst thing that could possibly happen. I mean, I guess that's all the fantasy realm when you're just swimming in it.
And then that third line life, you know, you're like, oh, that before happened, you know, ooh.
Going through and thinking about all the things that have happened, what could happen, and you're like, oh yeah, it gets wild up there. It really does. I have to continue to bring myself back into this imagination that I have, because I'll get lost in it sometimes. But that's what go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Well, I was going to say, like, this, with it being in my earth, this is truly the gate that I need the most balance in. And like, it makes sense that I struggle so much with it. But now knowing like, you've got to rein this in, you're going to have pressure for anticipation, but you don't need to. But I think Ra also said that somebody who has Gate 41, but I think he said it's sitting in the 5th line. He's like, this is somebody that's going to make their dreams come true. This is somebody that's going to be able to really be able to push their limits and be able to manifest their gigantic dreams. And I'm like, oh, okay, well.
That's interesting, because I feel like we need the dreamers. You know, one of my best friends has 41, Sarah, and she lived with us for a year, and I have 30, and her and I just got so sucked into fantasy land when we lived together. It was almost like the fantasies were taking over our reality, and we were both like unhooked from reality, like just fantasy and desire. I would think probably especially for her, because she's open in her solar plexus, so that just gave her that channel.
She's innocence too.
Yeah, that's
you guys were just like all.
But yeah, it's like we need the dreamers. We need people that are like desiring to have new experiences, or dreaming, or fantasizing. I think it's just when you get attached to the dreams, I guess, unless you're a 41.5.
It's whenever you add expectations to what you're experiencing. Like it's about going, because it's that wave that comes off of 30 is all about desire. And if it's like, if I desire and I have expectations within this experience, it's like, whoo, you are setting yourself up for bitterness, because you're truly trying. Yeah, it's that expectation. So I'm still learning how to, the right angle cross of unexpected. Like I'm just trying to let things happen without having any expectation on the other side of it.
Right. I think there's a frequency too with projectors and expectation that is just does not feel good. Like projectors as a type in general. And there's lots that I meet, and it's like, it feels very different to me than like generators or manifestors with expectation. Projectors with expectation, it's probably because of your aura. It's like, ooh, stabby. I don't like that, you know?
Yeah, you probably feel that we have an expectation, and you're like trying, especially somebody with a channel of struggle. If I hold an expectation and I'm bringing in, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you what you two have just opened up. Like I thought that a lot of the situations, but I thought it was coming from my root. I thought it was just the root. I'm like, man, it's just my root. Like I got a defined root. It's the only one that I really have defined. Like it's just this pressure that they're picking up. But now I know, like it really is that I mean, I can't even tell you, when I was coaching and I was coaching other coaches, they would even tell me like, there's something about you, Brandi. Like you come around, and I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just watching you coach. Like but I make it harder. I make it struggle more. Like just
got to be out of the aura. All good.
Yeah.
You're out of the aura.
Yeah.
So this is amazing
Yeah.
though. This is such a good like real time example of a projector learning about themselves through the other and how you really are kind of blind to yourself until you engage with the other like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with, as much knowledge as projectors might have about human design, and you can look at your chart and you can see what it is, it's still until it comes through the other, then it's like
Yeah.
wild.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So so you're doing one-on-one readings, guidance sessions. What are some of your offerings?
So right now I do one-on-one readings. And then from there, I do have what's called an immersion program where I help people integrate the energies, because I realize that people come in and they get these readings, but are you really taking away the juices of it? Are you applying it? Are you able to go through your own situation and be able to nail down, like, okay, this was coming from here or this was coming from there? So I do have an immersion program where I work with people one-on-one to help them integrate their energies and start expanding their self-awareness, so they can help improve their decision-making process. And those are the two things that I offer right now: readings and the immersion program. But yeah, like I said, I'm excited for what I'm shifting into.
Yeah. Do you feel safe to share any of that, or do you want to?
Well, so with what I was going with what I was, yes, was feeling really disconnected with the creating movement, because like it's not even a core value, I mean, I guess, of mine anymore. And I was like, okay, so now where I am, what do I want to be recognized for? Where do I want to take this recognition? And I realized that if I can keep getting more specific on this recognition, the more successful I'm going to be as a projector. And so I'm really going to shift into gearing towards developing projectors, helping to decondition projectors, and really taking everything towards just projectors. I'll still have readings open to everybody, but I'm going to get more specific on how to help develop projectors to step into their power.
Yeah, that was the first thing that I recognized about you without even knowing you, was through your TikTok. I'm like, she's living as a projector. I mean, you're living as a projector. That's the only thing that projectors really need to be doing, is living as a projector. And to get from there, from living as a super generator to a projector, it's like you need some assistance, some integration. You need, all of that. But watching you, I was like, that's one of the first things I said to Teresa. I'm like, she's a projector living as a projector with only channel of struggle. That is a wild story. How is she, the fact
Well,
that go ahead, Teresa.
I was saying, like, as a pure individual too.
Yeah. Yes.
Here's the thing. You almost need to like mutate people into them wanting to live their design or have, and I'm not really phrasing that in a good way, but it's almost like I feel like the pure individual has an edge with that kind of stuff, because there's something that you bring to the table where, like, it's not initiating because they've obviously recognized and invited you, but it's like they're saying yes to receiving the mutation, and there's so much mutation that happens when you decide to live your design and stop trying to be everything else. And I feel like with projectors, it's very complex, and they really need a projector that's been through that.
Yeah. And that's where
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's a Brayton Balazzo. I don't know if you know who he is. He has a podcast called Pure Individual.
Okay.
He's a quad right emotional projector, pure individual.
Okay.
And it's potent. It's no bullshit, pure individual human design.
Okay. And what did you say his name was?
Brayton, Breyton.
No, I'm going to look him up. Yeah, no, and that's where I feel like that's where I'm going to shift to, because having that 3-5 and being able to go through this experience and being able to share that, I really feel like I can have a big influence on projectors that are wanting to step into their power. And that's where I've just kind of been feeling in this limbo. I'm like, where do I want to go next? What do I want to do? What direction do I want to go? Did I want to go in corporate, right? I was thinking about taking this into corporations. I wasn't sure, but then something about this conversation, and then I sat with myself and I actually just made a TikTok. I'm like, you have to get specific on what you want to be recognized for. And I took that question to myself, and so I'm going to shift it with that and start just focusing just on projectors and a development for that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's cool too, because it's almost like, I feel like, especially with an open head, we can go into that space of, well, I need to figure this out. How? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? Like, whatever. And then you just wait for the invitation, the recognition, and the recognition alerts you to it. You know, as long as your authority agrees to it and you like what you're being recognized for, you feel that recognition, that's what guides you, right? It's like you don't have to figure anything out. You can just do your thing and wait for the recognition and the invitations, and then it all starts to make sense. So that's really what I've been hearing from you in this chat is like, oh, this invitation and the recognition led you to what you're doing next. You didn't even have to figure it out, really.
Yeah, but I do want to add a comment to that where it almost sounds like that came, and it did. Where am I trying to go with this? It sounds, with that comment, it sounds like that recognition and invitation came from the outside, and that's kind of what validated me, maybe in a sense, where I feel like also the power really shifted when I recognized myself. It took you guys recognizing it, and then for me to be like, okay, now I recognize myself. So for also any projectors on here, the biggest thing is that you have to recognize yourself first, truly.
Yeah.
And one quote that I heard that I want to say that really landed with me, especially with my undefined G center and like trying to step into this new role. Instead of fake it till you make it, it's be it till you see it. It's like, I'm going to be this person and I'm going to be this way until I see the results, until my outer reality actually matches who it is that I want to be. I don't know why I said that. That felt like I needed to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the deconditioning process is we shed that, we change that. Who we are changes and our external will start to change, but we have to be willing to be courageous enough to experiment with coming back to ourselves and deconditioning, going back to our nature.
Yeah. And like accepting ourselves. I think you really pointed to something, Brandi, with an I, about how it doesn't matter if somebody else recognizes you if you can't see that within yourself. You know, I think it goes hand in hand, honestly. And I know this might seem like kind of radical in the self-help space, but like as an open ego, I need external validation sometimes. It's just, it is what it is. But other people can validate me all day long. And if I'm not like, you're right, yeah, fuck yeah, and like see that in myself, like I'm just gonna still sit here and like think that I'm not worthy of anything, right? And I'm probably not gonna respond or whatever. So I feel like from the projector perspective, if somebody's recognizing you, to be able to see that in yourself, be like, oh, okay, like cool, like they're seeing this in me. Yeah, I can see this in myself. This is dope. Like that's what actually makes that projector energy like so juicy, or the frequency.
Yeah, it feels good, you know, like that's what you're working for. We're working to be seen, you know. I love describing projectors as a lighthouse. You know, a lighthouse is going to post up in its position, it's going to shine its light, and it doesn't move. It's not like, hey, boat, you're over here, let me go over here and shine my light. No, it stands here and it shines its light, and those who are wanting it, those who are ready to use it, are guided by this light. But it's just this guiding force, and it's not changing its position, it's not changing its style, it's just recognizing itself. And yeah, it does feel good to be recognized from the outside when you're putting in all this work into yourself and to receive that recognition. But if that recognition does not, if that recognition does not come in from the inside, then it's really, you know, I feel like it's almost like, I mean, like, how are you going to show up in that invitation if you're not even recognizing yourself, right? Yeah. Like, are you now I'm going to try to prove myself, and now my heart center's in it, and now my heart center is going to be depleted, and now I'm going to be burnt out. So it's just this whole cycle to where it does go hand in hand. That recognition shows that you're on the right track and that you're in alignment with what you're doing, but it doesn't start there. It starts where you can recognize yourself. And then once you figure that out, then you can know what direction you need to go in.
Yeah. Well, the recognition would it even show up? The correct recognition.
Right.
Wouldn't even show up, you know, if you're not able to see that in yourself.
Yeah. If you're not like, almost like honoring yourself in that way. And that's something, oh man, like the projectors that we know that are really living their designs, it's like they know that they have something magical going on inside. Like they know that their guidance is, you know, and you can just feel it. Like they're not trying to push, force, prove anything, whatever. It's just more of like Yeah, come and get it. You gotta recognize it.
I think what's really shifted for me is that it's not about like waiting for an invitation. I'm creating my invitations now. Like that's what it is. Like I'm not just like, oh, I'm waiting. Like I'm creating them. I'm creating them through the way that I want to create them right now. Now those invitations can come through all over, right? But you can create your own invitations when you start really leaning into what you want to be recognized for, if that makes sense too.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're kind of like what I see is with projectors, they're working on the things that they want to be doing. They're mastering the systems, and while they're doing that, you know, they're recognizing, oh, this is what I'm being drawn to, and then it's like, and then the invitations start coming from the external. But if they don't trust themselves enough to work on the things that they're guided to, then those invitations won't come.
Yeah, and if you're like distracted and, you know, running around like an MG and doing all these different things, people are just going to assume like that's what you want to do. So they're going to invite you to that. Like, oh yeah, let me invite you to like do my yard work because I see that you're doing yard work all the time.
Exactly.
And then you could be like, no, I'm going to recognize that I'm not doing yard work and I'm going to hire somebody. And then nobody asks you to do it again.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we're coming up on time because I think you have a client.
I do. I have a client in 30 minutes.
So where can people find you?
Yeah, if anyone's on here that follows me, of course, the link will be in my Instagram page. But my website is merakimovement.org. Or you really find me on TikTok. Brandi Yates is the easiest way. That's where most people communicate with me is through TikTok. So either TikTok, of course, on Instagram, you can find that link inside any one of my platforms to be able to connect to schedule a reading if someone's interested in that.
Awesome.
This was so great to have you.
This was so awesome. Thank you both. This was absolutely fabulous. You two, what you're doing and how you're doing it is admirable, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's just like I said, our little passion project where we just like to talk about human design.
It's fun.
Started for selfish purposes, of course. We're both right angles.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're really happy to have you.
We like to talk to people and externalize, so let's get on live and do it.
Yeah. I feel you.
And share about, you know, living your design and how it's so different for every single person, and there's no one way to do it. And so I think these lives really help people see that it's so multifaceted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much. And you can find Brandi on Brandi Yates on Instagram and TikTok. Just make sure on TikTok that it's the real account. Because TikTok, sometimes people kind of blow up on TikTok. They'll create spam accounts just like here on Instagram. So, yeah. Check that out before. And yeah, anything you want to say before we hop off?
No, just like I said, this whole thing initiated me and allowed me to step into a different direction. And so just, even though this is a passion project for you, you guys are initiating things in action and allowing other people to respond to things that allows them to set themselves into motion as well. So I appreciate what you two are doing, and I really, truly enjoyed this.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.